grandfather and grandmother, ancestors and elders, Sacred Mother Earth, come apart in this quiet place from all of the noise and hustle and bustle of the world to enjoy a few moments of fellowship, and joy, and laughter, and good talk, and good stories within and amongst this family. And we come here, yes, to draw near to one another, but we come here most especially to draw near to you. In the midst of all of the noise, we yearn to hear your voice. We yearn to hear the whisper of your wisdom. We yearn to feel the gentle nudging of your spirit. And we yearn for the directions and the instructions of how to walk and how to live and how to act and behave in a good way that brings honor to you and to the earth and to our neighbor. You heard the concerns and the cares of our people, both spoken and those that have remained close to the heart. But you know them already even before we speak. Bring us comfort today. Bring us joy today. Bring us a moment of happiness today. Give us a glimpse and guidance of where and how to go, where and how to walk, where and how to live out our calling and our destiny as relatives of the seventh generation. I pray today that you inspire us to look beyond ourselves. I pray today that you would inspire us to seek ways in which we can be of service and help to others. Give us this vision of who we can be, of what we can do, and the change and reconciliation that we can bring to a broken world longing for the light again. And help us today to ignite that little spark of fire within ourselves so that ours is indeed the light that shines into that darkness and points the way. Help us in these things, I pray. Aho. One of the challenges that I'm finding myself experiencing with my talks of late is that after it's all prepared and said and done, and I think it's finished, I got an hour from the time I leave my house to the time I got here, and I'm rehearsing it in my mind, and then I think, well, let me add this, and well, let me say that, and let me include. I want to better not forget. Well, by the time I get here, it's all gone. Do y'all have that problem sometimes? And you look around and say, where did it go? It was just here. But I hope this in some disjointed way that it is, that it speaks to us. It certainly has been an inspiration to write about this and think about and prepare this message, which follows on the heels of one of the things that I spoke about in last Sunday's talk, um, and where I briefly mentioned what I call or consider the 9 indigenous virtues. We spoke last week about generosity. And collectively, these 9 virtues are honor, integrity, loyalty, generosity, compassion, humor, valor, gratitude, and silence. But today, I want to speak somewhat about generosity. For we are in the midst of a season of gifts and giving. During a time of seamless and seeming hopelessness on the streets, we typically will find ourselves responding to the needs of others or the gifting of others in one of two ways, either out of guilt or out of generosity. And so it's the generosity part that I would like to speak about and offer what I trust is a tidbit of wisdom in how we, as seventh generation relatives, are called to act and behave in this world. Let me begin by telling you a story. Maybe some of you have heard about this or seen videos on some of the social media platforms. But this past week, there's been quite a social media frenzy going on out there, one that's gone worldwide viral about a young Australian kindness influencer by the name of Samuel Weedenhoffer, a man known for his random acts of kindness and blessings to people that he encounters along the way. One of his most recent encounters was a man in Brighton, Michigan, by the name of Ed Bambus. If you're not familiar with this story, I encourage you to look it up. It's very easily found on Google. It's all over the place. But Ed is 88 years old, and he's still working 40 plus hours, 5 days a week in the supermarket in Brighton, Michigan. He has to. Ed's story is a rather sad one. One, in my opinion, and the opinion of many, should have never ever happened on so many, many levels. Ed, a U.S. Army veteran, retired from General Motors with a good pension, health insurance, and life insurance. Several years ago, General Motors went bankrupt, and along with it, all of the benefits, including Ed's pension and insurance, both health and life, were gone virtually overnight. Not long after this, Ed's wife's health began to fail. And with no insurance and little income, large bills and expenses overwhelming, Ed sold his house and returned to work in a supermarket. Ed's wife passed away in the midst of this chaos. And that, and along with all of the other demands of bills and financing and housing took Ed back to work as a cashier, where Ed told and shared his story with his customers, one of whom reached out to Samuel Weedenhoffer with the story. Samuel traveled 9,000 miles to meet with an unsuspecting Ed. The video of the encounter starts as Samuel asks Ed, who incidentally is, or I should say was, about $250,000 in debt at this point in his 88-year journey. He encounters Ed at work and asks him to scan a bottle of water. And they strike up a conversation. And Ed begins to share his story. As Samuel, who knows it already, leans in with intrigue and tell me more questions. It's a beautiful encounter. As they depart, Samuel reaches into his pocket and takes out $400 in cash and hands it to Ed. This is for you, man. You deserve it. Ed is a bit skeptical at first. In this world today, who would not be for a random stranger just walking up and handing you $400? But his skepticism led him to humility. And with tears and much emotion, the two hugged together with much gratitude, kindness, generosity. But it did not end there. Not anywhere close. Samuel, you see, went on to launch a GoFundMe campaign to help Ed. He posted the video of his initial encounter on his social media pages and to his nearly 10 million followers, asking for help. Donations to respond to Ed's situation and his needs. Within hours, the promotion had raised $1.7 million. One of the most successful and highest funded projects in the entire history of the GoFundMe platform. Thousands around the world responded with and in generosity, with the highest single donation being $10,000, down to countless $5 and $10 donations. $1.7 million. Thousands were confronted with the story and compelled to do something. And the collective results from that were huge and life-changing for an old man still grieving the loss of his wife, whose name is Ed Bambus. And that, dear relatives, is generosity. Seeing a need, being moved to respond as best we can, and then doing it. Generosity, you see, releases an energy that, like a vortex, swirls and sweeps and scoops everything around it into its heart and into its center, especially when it's done in and with joy. For in reality, generosity that comes from any other place other than joy is not generosity at all. That's just recycling. The process of generosity begins in the heart. We see or we hear about a need, it enters our heart space and our heart begins to warm and soften. Then it moves cognitively as we begin to think about and consider how we can best respond. That then moves us to consider our resources and our abilities to respond. And then it moves to the doing part. And that's where we step beyond those somebody should do something thoughts to I will do something. And then actually doing it. Generosity, the act of giving with joy, giving with kindness, you see, connects us to one another in ways that change us. It is an exchange of energy that changes and transforms both the giver and the recipient. True, Ed's life has changed forever, but so has the life and spirit of those thousands who participated in the process and the exchange of energies. Why? Because they participated in the event. I know this from my own experience. For 9 years ago, about this same time, I had just returned from Standing Rock, where when I heard the call and saw the need of our young water protectors who were convinced they could stop a pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline. Perhaps you're familiar with that incident. When I saw the need and the violence that our young warriors were experiencing, and when I heard them ask and call for help, I felt compelled to go. That was the hard part for me. And then I began to think about and consider what could I do that would actually and hopefully make a difference. That's the cognitive part. And then I inventoried my resources. And admittedly, I did not find too much in that container, as my own finances were tight at the time. And at 65, going to North Dakota in the middle of winter, with no prior or possible arrangements for anything, was a bit daunting to me. That then moved me to the doing part. For me, it came down to a decision: do I go or do I stay? For me, it was a calling that challenged me to the point of giving all that I could, and somehow that was enough. I heard the voice of Creator saying to me, who knows, maybe you were created for such a moment as this. And so I went. It was an absolute surrender and trust. And Creator, provided for my every need from the moment I arrived until the day that I left. Standing Rock was an experience that changed the lives of many, and it was an experience that changed mine. And I know from those I worked with in the mental health and emotional well-being council, we changed the lives of countless others who came to us seeking help, guidance, and counsel. It was amazing. I received so many gifts from the people there. I literally had to arrange having them shipped back to my home, as I could have no way taken them all on an airplane. And that exchange of energy continues even to this day, as there are several water protectors and friends and colleagues that I met there with whom I stay in touch with and speak to often. One just last week. It's always a delight for me to speak with Jasmine, and our story on the disastrous night of November 20th of 2016, when we brought an old elder back to life in the back of a pickup truck, is quite remarkable. So what's all this have to do with generosity? Generosity is that place, and it is that moment where we step out of ego and enter a sacred space of humility with another or others, and offer with joy the unique gift of ourself, and knowing that that's enough. We as seventh generation relatives, those who are destined and called to be a generation, a people of shift, transformation, healing, change, and restoration, found countless of needs all around us. We don't have to look far to find the ways and means of need. And no, we cannot save everyone, at least individually. But like the young boy walking along the shore and tossing starfish who had been washed ashore in the storm back into the ocean, and when confronted by a crotchety old man who barked, "Boy, don't you know you can't save all of them?" Tossed yet another one back into the ocean, and with a smile replied, "Saved that one, didn't I?" While traditionally, this is the season we give the most consideration to generosity. Let us become a people who look for ways to help, needs to meet, hunger to feed, thirst to quench, cold to warm, clothes to cover, whatever we can do to help another. In the native way, generosity is at the core of our relating and relationships. Giveaways and giveaway ceremonies are central to the native practice and way of life. It's been that way for generations, often resulting in the giving away of all of one's possessions. Now, I'm not advocating or calling for that extreme, but I am calling us to a place of consideration of our relatives, great and small, rich and poor, full or in lack, and how through the gifts of ourselves, our time, our kindness, our compassion, our resources, our generosity, we are able to enter a sacred intimacy with others that may in fact need us in the very thing we can offer at the right place and at the right time. Kind of like the way in which it happened to Ed. So can we all come together in a good way to help others like him? For who knows? Maybe you were created for such a moment as this. Oh, another caveat about generosity, and I read about this yesterday. about something that happened right here in our own hometown of Athens, Georgia. And it shows how generosity has a way of sometimes coming full circle in with a twist of magic and miracles. The story was about a young man whose name was Chris Wagner here in Athens, who one Sunday on a morning like today, cold and rainy and dreary, was driving his family to church when he passed a woman on the side of the road carrying a gas can. And he thought, well, maybe I can do something to help her. So he took his family to church and then turned around in the car and went back, hoping that she would still be there. And of course she was, walking down the street on a cold, rainy morning carrying a gas can. Stopped and asked her if she needed help. She told him her car had run out of gas. Chris put her in his car and took her back to the gas station, filled up the gas station, came back, filled up the car, drove her back to the gas station and filled up the rest of the tank, reached into his wallet and pulled out $40, all that he had, and apologized that it couldn't have been more. They hugged out and went on their merry way and maybe thought about each other once and again occasionally. One day, Chris's mother became critically ill and was in need of skilled nursing care. On one of Chris's visits with his mother, a nurse was there. They entered into conversation, and the nurse began to tell a story about one day on a Sunday morning, cold and rainy, she had run out of gas in her car, and this strange man stopped and picked me up, took me to the gas station and filled up my car and gave me $40 and apologized that it couldn't be more. Chris was listening in disbelief. And he said, oh my God, that was me. That was me. You see how it all comes full circle in a way of magic and miracles? So this is what I mean when I speak about generosity as being a mode or an experience of the exchange of energy. It's like deposits that we make into the bank account of the universe. And who knows, maybe it will someday be our turn to go to the ATM and make a withdrawal. And I assure you, you cannot or ever will withdraw much more than what we've already deposited along the way. That's why generosity is essential to our way of life. And it is essential to who and what we are as seventh generation relatives. Let's bring all of that to the altar now for our time of prayer. Again and always, every time I come to this altar, I do so with so much gratitude for you two, for coming here early and getting all of this set up for us in a beautiful way. Mark and Susan have blessed us with some candles to replenish and refresh the altar. The fire is set. Everything on the altar here is now ready for us to come and make our good prayers. So let's come and share this time of prayer together.